It's time for a 2 days late edition of the Geek Fix right here on Thinking Critical. The first 20 minutes will be up on YouTube's. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It was loud, wasn't it?
It was. It wasn't. And like people will be like, Wes farted.
These fucking assholes. Okay.
Okay.
It's time for a 2 days late edition of the Geek Fix on Thinking Critical Patreon. Although the first topic will be up on the YouTubes, I believe on Sunday morning. And here with me, as always, is my good friend Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing great. What a weird, wild week, huh?
It has been a little bit different. You did go off to LA Comic-Con with our good friend MVP. You came back optimistic, refreshed, and then all hell broke loose. There was a 60-second clip, which I talked about on Friday on the channel, basically talking about some of the overarching issues in comic books, and there was immediate outrage by people he wasn't even talking about. And then we've been lectured for the last 2 days about how comic creators are not Burger King. It's not your way. If you want us to write stories that you want to read, you've come to the wrong place. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it feels like they're actively trying to push the last remaining comic book fans out of the hobby and thus put themselves out of a job.
It's really strange. I have a very different philosophy when it comes to this. People will say, I get like writing what you're passionate about, writing the stories that you want to tell. And I think that you can definitely do that on your own book, on your own characters, spending your own money. But I think when a publisher hires you to write Spider-Man, you should write stories about Spider-Man. You should think, what kind of Spider-Man stories can I tell? What will the fans, what do the fans love about Spider-Man? What am I passionate about within the framework of what, we all love about Spider-Man, and tell stories from that perspective. So it seems I'm in the minority.
It does seem you're in the minority. At first, I think it was Ram B that was lecturing people. And then it was, my goodness, who was it? It was.
So we had Si Spurrier.
No, the one that jumped on Ram V.
Oh,
stop! I got it. Right. Mm-hmm. Ron Mars jumped into the mix, and then Si Spurrier jumped into the mix, and I'm going, my goodness, these guys are the last people that should be like kind of lecturing people. Ram V's on Detective Comics. Detective Comics literally just dropped out of the top 50 as far as comic book sales. That never happens with Detective Comics. Shockingly, writing a really boring, slow-paced Batman comic doesn't do it. Si Spurrier, everything that he writes for Marvel or DC, if it's ongoing, gets canceled in less than 10 issues. Marvel won't even put him on an ongoing book anymore because they know inevitably it won't last more than 5 issues. This guy can't tell a story that people actually want to read, but he's going to tell me that I'm the problem? When you get a book like The Flash, there's history along with Barry Allen. There's history along with Wally West. There's history along with DC Comics. There's an expectation of the fans that when they pick up and open a Flash comic book, that they're actually going to get a Flash story that makes sense with the history and continuity and the characterization of those heroes that they've been reading for decades. When you decide that you're no longer going to write stories about Wally West or Barry Allen, you're going to do your own weird thing. It's no surprise when the people say, that is not the Flash book I was looking for. And there's nothing wrong with that.
You've got Ron Mars saying, this isn't a restaurant. You don't just get to pick something off the menu. But you do. You do get to pick something off the menu. You get to walk in and you get to say, I want the Flash. If you walk into a restaurant and you say, I want a hamburger, and they give you 2 buns and in the middle is a casserole, you're going to say, this isn't what I ordered. And you're not going to go back to that restaurant. So, I definitely, I think there's 2 schools of thought here, and I definitely agree with the philosophy of writing what you're passionate about, following your muse when it's your own thing. But when you've been hired by a publisher to tell stories about a character with an established history, with an established fan base, I think you're working with a team, and shops are depending upon you to write a story that they can sell to their customers. I think that you have a responsibility to get over yourself and, find what's interesting to you about that character and then write a story that is firmly ensconced in that character and its continuity. I think that it's extremely selfish to say, well, I'm going to come out of this book and I'm just going to write the things that I want to write. I said on Twitter earlier, I may be very passionate about gardening. It doesn't mean that I should write a Dr. Doom series that's all about gardening. I should write a series that's about Dr. Doom.
Hey, and if you can mix gardening into it in a way that makes sense for the character, I guess go ahead and try. I don't think it'll work. But it's just another example of just a small minority of the creators going out of their way to basically spoil the entire industry for all their contemporaries and their peers and the colorists and the line artists and the letters and everything, who are all depending on these people to put out good, high quality books to keep them employed. And every single time they have the chance, they just kill the goodwill with the fandom and try to tell them they're stupid for having expectations based on the cover of a comic book that says the hero, and it depicts a piece of art that should be in the book itself.
It's really just backwards kind of narcissistic thinking. I guess maybe I just approach these things with more of a reverence and more of a humility. When I write a story, I'm thinking about like, okay, I'm going to dig into this character. I'm going to dig into their history. I'm going to dig into the continuity. What can I find in there that I can pull out and I can tell a new story with, but that's still rooted in the character, that's rooted in the personalities of these characters that are coming together? What conflicts will that cause? It's just all about the character, and there's very little of me in it. It's me finding what's interesting about that property, that IP, that that character's history, their personality. That's where I think you should be coming from when you're writing things that you're asking people to spend money on. When you're writing your own thing and you're putting your own money into it, and it's you're the only person that is at risk, then I think, hey, go nuts. But otherwise, I think that you have with great power comes great responsibility. And getting to write a character like Spider-Man or Captain America or, Batman, that is a huge responsibility.
And I just, the Si Spurrier stuff it made me laugh the most because, in the video clip from Glenn from Comic Book Palace, he's talking about the new writers don't respect the history. They don't respect the characters. They're always trying to put themselves into the book, and nobody's really interested in that. Well, Si Spurrier's not a new writer. He's been around for like 20 goddamn years. He's not even like a D-list writer at this point. He's got himself on a couple of bigger titles. He never, ever lasts because he wants to be Warren Ellis. Every time he writes a book, he wants to do it how he thinks Warren Ellis would do it. But he forgot the part that whenever Warren Ellis goes on to an established character or universe, he would make his ideas fit into that universe and make sense for the character. That's why people liked Warren Ellis, and that's why people don't like Si Spurrier, because he goes for the really out-of-the-box concept, which in theory could be a whole lot of fun, but he never explores it in a framework that makes sense for the character. And he hasn't figured out over 2 fucking decades. That's why you're still a failure. That's why your books don't last. That's why you don't have a signature run on anything, despite writing so many characters within DC and Marvel over the years.
Are you telling me that you can't become Warren Ellis just by sliding your blade in between the ribs of Warren Ellis, your mentor, as soon as it becomes opportunistic to do so? Are you telling me that there isn't a talent transfer that goes on, Wes? I can't believe that.
Well, I'm telling you, he learned the wrong lessons from Warren Ellis. Yes, he liked the concepts that he was using, but he never understood or appreciated the fact he was able to take those concepts and make them work within the framework, the character, and the history, and the universe.
No, and then he's going to lecture everybody. I hope that every time a Si Spurrier book comes up for order, that somebody sends retailers that parable of the dog in the empty bowl that he posted on Twitter. I hope that they send that to the retailers, just to remind the retailers of what it is that Si Spurrier actually thinks of you, of what he thinks of your customers. That the problem is these people don't care about the shops. As much as they used to say when fans were pushing back and saying, I don't like this, they'd say, well, you aren't my customer. The retailers are my customer. And the publishers would say the retailers are our customer. And now they're actually denigrating the retailers. This guy is telling you why he thinks his books aren't selling in his store. The feedback that he's getting from his customers of why they're not coming in every week anymore, why they're just popping in, every 3 months just to see what's on the shelves and then not really buying much. He's given you the feedback, but you want to ignore it, and you ignore it at your peril. I know that you want to write your political manifestos. I know that you want to write, all of your, social activist bullshit in every book. And what you seem to be unable to grasp is that if the industry were actually healthy, if there were more books that appealed to a mainstream audience, the industry would be robust enough that maybe you could write those books and they would be able to survive long enough audience that you're looking for. But trying to make them the mainstream books is killing off the audience.
Yeah, and Flash was in such a terrible shape after Tom King, who's notorious for inserting a bunch of stuff that makes no sense for the characters, obviously into Heroes in Crisis, destroys Wally West, the symbol of hope in DC Rebirth, turns off an entire fan base, a couple of generations of comic book readers whose Flash is Wally West. They put Jeremy Adams on the book. Not really a big name in comic books. In fact, he probably wasn't a name at all. He goes out of his way. He writes really good Wally West stories. For over a year, the sales start creeping up, and then finally it jumps back into the top 50. They get a little event there kind of at the end, just a flash event, but all of a sudden the sales were pretty darn good. It had jumped back in the top 25. They reboot it back to a number one, which they didn't do for Jeremy Adams, so he didn't get the number one sales bump like a Si Spurrier did. And on the third issue, it's already out of the top 50. What does that tell you about what people were looking for in the Flash book?
Yeah, they shoot themselves in the foot all the time. You can't fix any of this stuff overnight. Yet Jeremy Adams come on. He started to do solid work. You know, I know some people, you know, there's always some people that are like, I don't like it. But you know what? Compared to what you've been getting and compared to what you're getting now, it's light years ahead, even if you think that it's mid. I personally liked it. But you started to see sales creep up, like you said, because word of mouth starts to spread. People start to go, hey, the Flash is good again. And then somebody's like, I'm not reading that. You know, after Heroes in Crisis, there's no way. And people are like, no, check this out. You know, the fans go and they spread it around and the sales start to come up. And so what do you do when you're DC? You decide, hey, let's sabotage this. I am at the point where I think that this is all just some big producer style scheme where the more money we can lose, the more, you know.
We're playing a joke on the entire industry for 5 years straight.
I mean, to go from Jeremy Adams to Si Spurrier is just the most depressing thing. It's like having a Ruth's Chris steak in front of you and then somebody pulls it away and just throws like a 2-day-old McDonald's hamburger patty on your plate. It's just that's the level of difference in quality and care, I think, that has gone into these books. And it's really depressing. And, you know, we blame the writers all the time, but we got to start giving it to the editors because, you know, it's the editors that are making these decisions. And we got to start, we got to keep roasting Jim Lee for just being asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, so it was not a good end of the week for the comic book industry itself. Certainly not the media, and certainly not for the creators. And like I said, it's a small minority other creators putting an enormous black eye on kind of all of them. Not a good week for DC, Marvel, certainly not a good week for the editors or whatever. But you did have some optimism earlier in the week. You went out to LA Comic-Con and you were excited. You were going to be talking about how rejuvenated your interest was in comic books until you were reminded just what a bunch of assholes these guys are. Or not all of them, but certainly the ones that are talking are.
Well, you know, I wasn't rejuvenated by the comic book pros. That's for damn sure. Although I did meet a couple of really nice ones, including Jeremy Adams, who I didn't introduce myself because I don't want him to get in trouble. But I just went up and met him as an anonymous fan, and he couldn't have been nicer. My positivity came from. So we went down and we hung out. We went to the panels that Chris Gore from Film Threat, was doing. We watched Gary from Nerdrotic was there. Star Wars Girl, Kara from Rippaverse. You had X-Ray Girl there, Comic Girl 19. Like all these YouTubers were there, and they were just talking about the death of the modern franchise and the state of the industry, and the sheer amount of people that packed those rooms to see them and to hear what they had to say and to ask questions and to offer their insight was just such a positive, like excited for these properties kind of fandom that has been continually let down. And by the way, a very diverse fandom, despite what the comic creators would have you believe. There were people from all
Aaron,
walks
I gotta
of life.
ask, when Gary from Nerdrotic met a fan that didn't agree with all of his choices and he told him to go fuck himself, did the guy stick around?
Well, that never happened, Wes, because people
with respect.
He treats his fans with respect. Even at the end of his video, he says, if you watched, if you liked what you heard, thank you, and if you didn't, thanks for sticking around so long. The nice thing about this whole group of people is you want to talk about inclusivity. You want to talk about welcoming people. That's what this group of YouTubers does. I mean, everybody who came out, once the panel is over and they kind of kick you out, they would stand around in the hall and talked to everybody who wanted to come up and talk to them for as long as they wanted before they had to, run to the next thing. The really funny thing is those panels were packed. And right after the panel on Sunday, which was, why 99% of movies suck now. That was the name of the panel. Right after that panel, it was Kevin Smith taking the stage, and the room was not full. So that kind of tells you the way that things are going. People are moving away from the shills. Chris Gore has more pull now. Chris Gore has more pull. Gary has more pull. And by the way, super nice. Hung out with them, swapped stories. They couldn't be more welcoming. I met so many great fans. I met fans of Thinking Critical, who watch us here.
Did you have a
shout
line?
Out to Michael. Yeah. Well, I didn't have a line because I wasn't sitting anywhere. But I did have, while I was standing out there talking, there were people waiting to talk to me. And so this is the first year that it was probably 50-50 between people coming up and saying, thank you so much for your Darkwing Duck run. I really loved it. Really loved what you did there. And then people coming up and saying, I watch you on Thinking Critical. Is Wes here? You guys are so great. Blah, blah, blah. We really appreciate what you do. And it was amazing. And it was an amazing, diverse group. Shout out to Michael, shout out to A Man Called Chill, shout out to the Luke Skywalker cosplayer and the Preacher cosplayer that I met. I'm sorry I forgot your names, but all people that that stopped me and wanted to talk, and we just had a great conversation. And I remembered that first and foremost, I am a fan. I'm a fan of these things. I'm not a fan of the people that are currently in charge, but I am a fan of these properties like they are. And I have way more in common with them, the fandom, than I ever will with these group of cultural vandals that just want to scrawl their name all over everything in their narcissism. I have no interest in that. I have no interest in being part of a cabal that has to constantly watch its back because you're wondering who's going to throw you under the bus for 10 minutes of Twitter clout. I don't want to be involved with those people at all. The people that I want to be involved with are the people that came out to see the panels and the people that watch us here on Thinking Critical.
It's crazy. I certainly have been getting more feedback from other people that are members of the Thinking Critical family. Well, they'll go out to a con and so wanted you to let you know that they watch your show. They think it's really good. So it feels like we're not quite mainstream. We're more underground, but a lot of the cooler creators in comic books seems to appreciate the fact that we're being very honest about what's good and what's bad.
We want the industry, at the end of the day, we want the industry to be healthy. We want the industry to sell books. We want there to be more opportunities for creators to write and for them to be able to make better page rates because the industry is doing so well. And unfortunately, these people that are only interested, this Whisper network that's only interested in hanging on to their power, their power over this tiny little industry that's getting tinier every day. Well, they get to cancel people, Wes. They get to be in groups where they wake up and the actual message in the group is, so who are we canceling today? There's screenshots. There's screenshots of that. There's all kinds of things. All these people that you see that are out there attacking Glenn and so for example, you have Si Spurrier out there doing his bit. And then you have Heidi McDonald coming in and saying, the funny thing is, even if Si Spurrier says, replace all the, books that you don't like with all the books that you think are great, like all these Comicsgate books. And then Heidi's like, they don't even sell in the direct market. I'm surprised no more people aren't bringing this up. Bitch, every time they've tried to get into the direct market, you and your ilk have gone on a campaign to keep them out because you're afraid of the competition. You're afraid of the loss of power. Don't come in here and say they don't even care about the retailers. They don't even try to go through the direct market. They could put their, they could do their crowdfunding and then they could put this stuff in the direct market and it would probably sell really well. How well do you think Isom might do in the direct market? How well do you think Cyberfrog might do in the direct market? Wraith of God, any of these books, Fiendish. If you put those out, with new covers, I would check them out again. I would buy them off the shelf.
My favorite thing from Heidi was when she was like, what if there was a retailer out there that actually talked about what was good? And someone's like, Wes has been doing that for years on his channel. Oh, and the guy that you're trying to cancel right now, he does that on his channel. I was like, and I know Yule does that on his channel. What are you talking about? There's plenty of that stuff out there. You just don't watch it because you actually don't care about that. She's never single boosted, to my knowledge, one video from the three of us, and we've all been doing it for years, talking about what's good.
Well, because you're Comicsgate adjacent, Wes. That's that's just like she has to go. No, right? What does that even mean? But it's it's just you share unfavorable views. You don't just kiss the ass of everybody who's in the industry and say that everything is roses and sunshine. While the thing just runs aground like Donnie Cates driving a boat. It's just
but the thing that she wants more than anything's been out there for fucking years.
Well, then she pivoted and she was like
thousands or over 1,000 views per video. I get over 3,000 views per video. Normally it's well over 5,000 on the best of the week stuff. Yule's been doing it. He's got a bit of a smaller channel, but he's do well as well. The shit's out there.
But then she pivoted. Her point was, well, they're not putting it out there. They're not like promoting it on Twitter. It's not getting that kind of engagement. Maybe it's because if a pro put out a link to a video where you praised their book, the Whisper Network would be set upon destroying them. Maybe that's part of the reason.
Some pros do it. Mark Miller will do it if I promote one of his books. I have actually seen, I think Jeremy Adams did, because we did highlight one of his books on a #1 issue.
I'm sure he got night letters for that.
Well, I probably did. I've never really met the guy, but I've seen him signal boost some stuff. So there are a few creators out there, but it's certainly not on every one. And we're promoting at least 6 books and normally over 8 every week.
I saw one person, I retweeted one person who pointed out there actually was a movement to talk positively about the comics that people were buying. It was called Move the Needle. Move the Needle, and you tried to absolutely destroy it. So
Move the Needle was like the coolest moment. That was what kind of pre-Comicsgate, but when everyone was like, "Man, this is great stuff," and then they ruined that.
Yeah, and it was like people putting out what they were passionate about, and some of it was stuff that you would like to see promoted, Heidi. Some of that stuff that was in there, I saw titles in there that I was like, well, I wouldn't have bought that, but
go check out Comic Book Palace's fucking Facebook page. This dude pushes Archie comics harder than anybody I've ever seen in my life.
And Archie needs the promotion.
And Archie is the kind of shit that fucking Heidi theoretically thinks should replace Superman and Batman.
There you go. It's so disingenuous, but the fact that anybody puts any credibility behind somebody who actively tries to destroy people and who actively goes around to publishers at cons and some people are saying that you're Comicsgate, that just engages in those tactics of pretty nice business you got here. Would certainly be unfortunate if something were to happen to it. I just have no patience for those kind of people. They're empty and they're sad, and they should not be listened to. And we should shun them at every opportunity.
I agree. Although I have a YouTube channel, so sometimes I do have to highlight the stupidity out there. But Aaron, you and I are not done. We've got more of this conversation that's going to go on. We've also got tons of Marvel stuff. Disney basically quit the Marvels this week. Bob Iger is going to actually retire. He put a date out there, and we've got some other stuff going on with comic books, and we're going for another hour and 40 minutes, brother.
I don't think people want to miss it because, when you talk about Bob Iger's retirement, it may come a little early with all the criminal investigations that are probably going to spring up out of all of the fraud in Florida with the Reedy Creek district that Disney ran. So I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
And if you want to see that and get this podcast in full every single, normally Wednesday, it's going to be Friday this week. Definitely go over to the Patreon. There's a link in the video description and look at that Aaron's Never Ending Christmas Tree tier. And we offer some good stuff and a lot of podcasts. So definitely check that out. And we're going to start after these messages.
Thank you guys so much.